This board game raised $8.8 million. Yes, that's correct. $8.8 million on Kickstarter, making it the third biggest Kickstarter campaign of all time. Although its initial funding goal was $10,000, it blew past that and got 219,000 backers, making it the Kickstarter campaign with the most backers ever. Who came up with the concept for Exploding Kittens, and what makes it so special in the eyes of players and fans alike? Exploding Kittens was created by Elon Lee, Shane Small, and Matthew Inman. Elon and Shane particularly have an extensive background in game development, working as executives for Microsoft under Xbox. Elon started his career working as a character designer at Industrial Light and Magic, and actually worked on several movies, including Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Elon Lee was in fact responsible for developing the neck for Jar Jar Binks, possibly the least likable character in Star Wars history, a fact that he's actually apologized for time and time again. Seeing his talent in Hollywood, Microsoft hired him as a chief designer, designing games for both PC and Xbox. He led designing for The Beast, one of the world's first alternate reality games, received positively throughout the gaming community. He then founded several startups, including 42 Entertainment, for the next decade or so, before joining the team for Exploding Kittens. His co-creator Matthew Inman is most famously known for The Oatmeal, a humor-based webcomic known for viral comics like What It's Like to Own an Apple Product, How to Use a Semicolon, and 15-ish Things Worth Knowing About Coffee. The Oatmeal received 300,000 visitors in its first month, and within 10 months, it had 4.5 million visitors, ultimately peaking around 20 million page views per month. Elon Lee's work as a game designer is in fact the reason that inspired him to create Exploding Kittens. Having worked on Halo, the biggest gaming title of its time, he didn't quite feel right when he saw people spending hours and hours in front of the TV screen, not really interacting with each other, even if they had siblings or friends next to them. According to him, it felt like an extremely lonely experience, and he felt partly responsible for that, being the one that created the design for the game. In his own words, he said that he's the one who put the pixels on the screen and deserves part of the responsibility of how it's being used today. He did some brainstorming and wanted to bring people back to the good old days, where they could laugh together, enjoy each other's company, and still have fun. He met up with Shane, and they quickly developed a game called Bomb Squad. The concept for the game is extremely simple. There's a deck of cards. Some of the cards have bombs on it. If you draw the card with the bomb on it, you lose the game. This is the idea that they took to Inman. Inman originally liked the idea, but commented on the terrible theme, saying that it's got no soul. He wanted to use the humor he developed with writing comics and make the game funnier. One of the main problems he had with the entire concept was that people were really afraid of bombs. Bombs aren't particularly seen as a very fun thing, in fact scaring most people when they're mentioned. He didn't want people to stress or think about negativity when playing the game, and said, what if people, instead of thinking about bombs, were stressing about kittens when playing the game? Instead of the bomb, a kitten could blow you up. This is where the concept for Exploding Kittens was born. Inman did the characters for the game and developed the artwork. Some of the more popular cats include Taco Cat and a mother cat that has 4 swimsuit tops. This part was extremely easy for him, since he had 17 cats growing up as a child in Idaho. While Inman developed the artwork, some additional aspects were added to the game, including adding special cards that could help you avoid the bomb in the deck and ensure that you win the game. These include a diffuse card that you could use to defuse the bomb, a skip card, an attack card, a see the future card that you could use to see the top of a deck, a shuffle card that you could use to shuffle the deck, and a favor card. They also introduced a nope card that you could use to negate a player's action. For example, if a player chooses to skip their turn using the skip card, you could use the nope card to negate that action, forcing the player to draw a card. With the artwork ready, Inman went back to Shane and Elon, and the group decided to use other people's money to create the game. Setting up their first Kickstarter campaign, they decided to go with a short and sweet line explaining what the game does, and settled on the line, Exploding Kittens is a highly strategic kitty-powered version of Russian roulette. Players take turns drawing cards until someone draws an exploding kitten and loses the game. This short and sweet pitch, along with the great artwork for the game developed by Inman, received a positive response on the website, and they managed to raise nearly $9 million within 30 days of launching. After 30 days, the campaign started to plateau, and Lee and Inman had a genius idea. Why not turn Kickstarter into a game in itself? And that's exactly what they did, creating a daily point system with rewards so that when people play the game, they share it, encouraging more people to buy the game, which is exactly how it turned out to be. There's been 2.5 million decks of Exploding Kittens ordered so far, and with the price point being $20 a piece, revenue estimates are around $50 million. Part of the reason why the revenue is so high is the group's ingenious marketing tactics. They contacted Amazon.com and got the game featured on Prime Day, breaking the record for pre-orders. And in order to save marketing budget and advertise on ComicCon, they distributed cheap urinal cakes with exploding Kittens characters in all the men's locker rooms while ComicCon was happening. This was a viral smash hit, with people sharing pictures on the internet and also helping with mouth-to-mouth marketing at the event itself. Elon Lee said this was a philosophical decision by the team, saying that spending less money on marketing encourages the group to be more creative and find more ways to get viral. To add another element of upselling, they also introduced the NSFW deck, which includes bonus cards that aren't quote-unquote kid-friendly. The backers for this deck were in fact much higher at 200,000, with the original game receiving 15,000 backers as well. When the campaign hit $9 million, the group shifted its focus from fundraising and money to building a community so that more people would talk about the game and give it more presence online. Quarantine is the time Exploding Kitten really took off. Sales for the board game surged 500%, and the company ran out of inventory in the United States and Canada. Since people couldn't meet due to regulations and policies, the group had an ingenious idea of introducing an online version of Exploding Kittens called Quarantine Kittens. And even better, they made this game entirely free, fast-tracking the entire development process and getting it out as quickly as possible. This was an extreme shift in strategy for Exploding Kittens, whose initial idea and concept by Elon Lee was having community and playing it in person, enjoying time with your friends, and making new memories. The pivot was essential though, because no one knew when quarantine would end and people would be allowed to see each other again. Although a typical game develops usually in 18 to 24 months, this new game had to be fast-tracked, and for the first couple of weeks, the company faced a ton of failure and made zero progress. The big challenge was to create a virtual setting that mimics face-to-face interaction of a card-playing game and also has the intrigue and suspense that comes with that. When you're playing a board game, it's essential to see the opponent's face, their reactions. Some people might be afraid, some people might get nervous and have facial cues, and others might start laughing, giving players a reasonable advantage in the game. Also, bluffing and lying is a huge part of the game, which is very easy to do when you're not face-to-face, since the person cannot read your facial cues accurately. One of the other hard to replicate dynamics was the stealing aspect of the game. There's a steal card in the game that allows players to take another person's card. This is meant for in-person playing and not really suited for remote play. The founders were extremely concerned because of these problems, since they wanted to build an entertaining game, and in fact saying we build games that people enjoy and are entertained by and don't want to focus too much on the game itself. They managed to solve the first problem of being unable to see the players' faces relatively quickly, with companies like Zoom, Google Hangouts, and Cisco having video conferencing capabilities that they could utilize to ensure all players can see each other's faces. The bigger question was, how do they solve the second problem? There's no physical deck in online games. They couldn't find a way to replicate the deck yet with all of its capabilities. The solution they came up with was a bit genius. They decided that they were too focused on replicating Exploding Kittens and could use this as an opportunity to create an entire game in itself. They took inspiration from 3-card Monty, a very common con game played on city streets and corners that people use to take your money. The game goes like this: the con man has 3 cards face down on a table and they show you one, for example the Queen of Hearts, placing it face down after revealing it. Then they go on to shuffle the cards in a confusing manner, trying to confuse you before asking you to pick the card you think is the right one. If you pick the card correctly, you get all your money back plus some extra money. Too bad, better luck next time. But instead of 3 cards, they used 6 cards, and instead of drawing from a deck, you had to draw from a draw grid, and the card you drew from this draw grid was decided by another player. For example, player A, B, and C are playing together, and player B just had their turn, and it's player C's turn, and the player just went, player B has to tell player C what card to draw. If they say top left, they have to draw the top left card. If they say top right, they draw the top right card, etc. Once you draw, your turn ends, and the game resumes as normal. This slight change allowed people to play the game asynchronously and save the company a ton of money in development. The player also had to show their card to the camera just to keep people honest and make sure no one's cheating. Although no one cheats in board games anyways, that is a universal fact. So after 2 long weeks, the company finally had an entire game that they could push out to people. After the resounding success of Exploding Kittens, especially the new and improved quarantine version, Lee and Inman decided to work on more games, also making a game called You've Got Crabs. The concept of that game is slightly different. Players play in teams and have to come up with a non-vocal signal to indicate when their team has come up with 4 of the same crab cards. The first team to yell "You've got crabs" wins the game. If you shout "You've got crabs" and you don't have the right cards, you lose a point. The tricky part is, if the other team suspects that you're about to signal, they can point at you and say "You've got crabs." If they're right, you lose a point as well. So it's also a game of deception much like Exploding Kittens. Perhaps the group's biggest success after Exploding Kittens is Throw Burrito, an interesting cross between board games and dodgeball. Players have to collect a magic set of cards, and while doing that, they have to dodge airborne burritos. Sounds crazy, but it actually works. The cards collect points, but getting hit by the burritos loses points. A very unique way to play board games. Throw Burrito was such a resounding success that it ended up raising $1 million on Kickstarter in only 3 days. In fact, reaching $10,000 in 16 minutes. Even with the success of Throw Burrito and You've Got Crabs, the group wanted to go back to Exploding Kittens and further refine the game, coming up with a 2-player version for Exploding Kittens in 2022. It's smaller, more travel-friendly, and comes in a more compact box. And what's better is that it can also be combined with the original game. The group has always had a dilemma about whether or not to pursue traditional retail or keep on going with the crowd-funded approach. And although Throw Burrito and Exploding Kittens both raised millions of dollars on Kickstarter, they eventually had to shift to traditional retail to fully capitalize on the game's development. Thousands of individuals and companies come up with new board game ideas every year and don't do quite as well on Kickstarter. The founders insist that the thing that sets them apart is their focus on community, making the game fun, enjoyable, and memorable. If they focus too much on the monetary aspect, they might not be able to make the most fun game, which, at the end of the day, is what matters to them. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.